Coming up on this episode of Photography Online, we spend the day beside the seaside, we show you how to make a short film, and we look at the difference between JPEG and RAW. Welcome to another commercial-free episode of Photography Online. Before we unleash this show's features on you, here is a quick photography question just for fun. What is the equivalent f-stop of the human eye in bright conditions? A. f11, B. f5.6, C. f8, or D. f16? We'll give you the answer at the end of the show. Now, in addition to everything I mentioned in the intro, we'll also be revealing the winner of our Ilford giveaway, so if you entered that last month, stick around to see if you are the chosen one. After visiting the Ilford factory last month, we returned to Photography Online HQ here on the Isle of Skye via the Las Vegas of the UK. Well, alright, so it was only Blackpool, but the two do have lots in common. For example, I'll just run the video. If you want to capture one of the great traditions of the UK, then there can't be many better subjects than the seaside town. Blackpool might be past its heyday, but hey, that just adds to its photographic appeal. So, armed with both my digital and film cameras, I set off to see what I could capture through my viewfinders in just 24 hours. No agenda, no pressure, just having fun by taking a few photos. So here I am in Blackpool. As you can see, the weather is not fantastic, but I'm not going to let that put me off. So why don't you join me as I have a little look around. One of the appeals of Blackpool is the diversity it offers in subjects to point a lens at. Where else would you find Freddy Krueger hanging out next to teddy bears? No seaside town can call itself complete without a pier, and Blackpool has 3. Being here off-season when everything is closed offers a new perspective. I probably wouldn't have noticed the original signage under the newer peeling paint had this carousel been working, but this is where I saw the potential in this subject, telling the story of its historic past. So I can't come to Blackpool without, of course, photographing its most famous landmark, and I'm going to shoot it on film, which is going to be a really nice contrast. It's black and white in here, and I found some nice things to actually frame the tower with as well, hopefully give a bit more of an unusual viewpoint. Just like most seaside towns, Blackpool survives on tourism. Unsurprisingly, this hasn't been very active over the past couple of years, and there's clues that business has not been good. This stood out to me as a sign of the times, so I set out to capture some of the rundown guest houses which seem to litter almost every street. The atmosphere of Blackpool much better than coming into one of its many amusement arcades, so I'm going to have a little look around and see what strikes my fancy. With the skies clearing towards the end of the day, I was drawn to the seafront again, in search of suitable subjects to silhouette against the setting sun. There was probably a shot here somewhere, but I don't think I found it. However, with the arrival of the blue hour, the famous Blackpool Tower looked great reflecting on the wet beach. After a fish and chip supper and a decent night's rest, I was eager to return to the seafront to capture the town as it wakes up. So I've come back out early this morning just to revisit some of the places that we were at last night, but obviously today light is in a totally different position, so I just want to have a wander around and just kind of capture some different angles, different viewpoints in the different light and see what I get. With the high contrast light and the shapes and patterns surrounding me, it was time to change to my medium format film camera. This one I managed to time as a flock of birds flew past the tower. This one might as well have had a sign saying "Only shoot in black and white." So I found this really nice contrasty scene, obviously the sand and the shadows at this time in the morning. I thought it would work really well in black and white. I picked up a roll of black and white film from Ilford when we were at the factory, so just trying this on the film camera for something a little bit different. One of my favourite reasons to shoot film is the hands-on experience of developing it once I'm home. Disagree if you like, but this is so much more fun than putting a memory card into a computer and dragging a load of files into Lightroom. It's the jeopardy of not knowing what you've got until it's too late to do anything about it. Here's some of my favourite shots from my roll of film. These last two have light leaks from where I didn't wind the film onto the roll tightly enough. However, I think it's a cool effect which suits the subject perfectly. Despite the freezing temperatures and complete loss of feeling in my fingers, I really enjoyed walking around a new place with a couple of cameras. Coastal towns often offer great photo potential, and if you live in the UK, then it's impossible to be more than 70 miles from the sea, so you've really got no excuse. Grab a camera and make a day or even a weekend of it. You'll have great fun. If you missed our last show, then you wouldn't have seen what difference there is between the two Fuji medium format monsters other than £2,000 in price. You would know how to make a pinhole camera, and you wouldn't have seen our light-hearted look at what it takes to be a photography YouTuber. But fear not, that show and almost 50 others are all waiting for you on our channel. We've even compiled a handy content sheet to allow you to easily locate the features which will be most interesting to you, so feel free to download this from the link listed in the video description below. Okay, so since the start of the year, we have teamed up with Dolby Vision to give you a few basic tips on how to make great video content. This time we are being super creative and I've made a mini film using nothing but a phone. Here's Harry to tell us more.
In this, our penultimate episode of our Video Academy series, I'm going to be looking at one of the most important aspects of videography, storytelling. In previous episodes, we've covered some of the technical and compositional challenges when it comes to videography. So now that we're comfortable with that side of things, it's time to get creative and start having a little bit of fun. Although storytelling is important with stills photography, it's not an absolute necessity. The viewer often interprets the story behind a still image, so two people looking at the same image may end up with completely different stories. However, with video, things are a little bit different. The viewer expects the story to be told to them, so we need to place storytelling at the top of our priorities if we're to have a successful sequence of moving images. Think of it as taking the viewer's hand and leading them through the story or journey you want to portray. Now, this is nothing to be afraid of, and it's actually much easier to do this than with a still image. In a moment, we're going to show you a video we shot to illustrate all the stages I'm about to cover. But first, we need to know exactly what we need to do. Taking it right back to basics then, all stories need a beginning, middle and end. Now, all of these 3 points are important, but the beginning especially so, because it's where we hook the viewer and make them want to continue watching. The beginning is where we set the scene, and it prevents us from diving into the main story too soon. This can be as brief or as long as required, but I wouldn't recommend padding it out just for the sake of it. Get to the point as efficiently as possible, but without cutting any corners. This is as much about planning and editing as it is about filming, but you need to have an idea about the other two stages before capturing any footage. The middle section is where the bulk of the story is going to be told, so it's naturally where the most time and effort is going to be invested. All stories need a good ending. This doesn't necessarily have to be happy, although we all do love a happy ending. You do need to conclude your story, and this could be as simple as arriving at a destination. Applying these simple principles then, here's a short story filmed entirely on iPhone using Dolby Vision HDR. As you can see, stories don't need to be drawn out. They can last from a few seconds to feature-length film or longer. As mentioned, we filmed this totally in Dolby Vision with nothing more than an iPhone. To get the full benefits of Dolby Vision, you need to watch within the Dolby ecosystem. As of 2018, all Apple devices have Dolby Vision, and many new TVs, Android laptops, tablets and phones too. Remember that none of the footage was processed by us. That was all done by Dolby Vision technology automatically. The success of a story is as much down to the editing as it is with the capture of the content. So next time, in our final episode of this Video Academy, we'll be looking at some of the editing options, as this is often a scary process if you're not already familiar with it. I'll be showing you a few basic rules to get you on the right track, so join me for that next time.
Well, he'll be getting a BAFTA or an Oscar if he carries on like that. If you want to hear a few anecdotes about what went on behind the scenes when filming that, why not join us for our next Peel Live show when, as well as attempting a live sunset shoot, we'll also be delving deeper into all the topics covered on this show and the previous one. To find out more, simply press the join button or go to the relevant link in the usual place down here somewhere. Before we go any further though, we need to announce the winner of our Ilford giveaway, which was a home developing starter kit, which has got everything you need to process your first roll of film yourself at home. Plus, Ilford threw in 10 rolls of film in the format of the winner's choosing, so this was a great prize. All you had to do was keep an eye out in the show that we brought you from the Ilford factory for the home developing kit and enter the timestamp when it made its cameo appearance. The eagle-eyed among you should have seen it at 14:55. And out of the thousands of correct answers, we chose a winner at random. So if your name is on screen right now, congratulations, you are the proud owner of the developing kit. And you can choose any Ilford film or a selection in either 35mm or 120 format. We'll be in touch soon to discuss the details, but congratulations for now. Thank you to everyone that took part. Sadly, we could only have the one winner, but we've got many more amazing prizes to give away in the coming months, so make sure you're subscribed to our channel and maybe sign up to our newsletter so you never miss a show. Okay, well, it is time to continue the show with our essential camera skills. Knowing which file format to set your digital camera to is an important one, as Marcus is about to explain.
When it comes to shooting digitally, choosing the best file format is an important part of the process, as if this is wrong, it can really limit us in what we can do with the image once it's out of the camera. Before we start looking at situations where you may want to choose one over the other, let's look at the difference between shooting in JPEG and shooting in RAW. A camera will always record a photo in RAW. This is basically the image that the sensor recorded without any processing being applied. It then saves that file to the memory card. That's it, end of story. So thank goodness for the JPEG, otherwise this would be a very short feature. To help us understand how a JPEG works, we need to imagine that there's a little man, or of course it could be a wee lady, inside our camera. Now, let's give this man or lady a unisex name because it will make the rest of the feature far easier. So we'll call him or her Joe. Joe sits inside our camera somewhere around here and has access to a very basic form of Photoshop. Every time we take a photo in JPEG, Joe jumps into action, and using the picture settings that we've dialed in, including white balance, Joe edits that photo and saves the resulting file to the memory card. The original file then gets deleted and is lost forever. Now, Joe is an excellent photo editor, but sadly, Joe is not very creative and will only edit the photo according to the camera settings. So if we set these up incorrectly, poor Joe has no option but to edit the photo badly. All JPEG files are already edited, so they tend to look more dynamic than an equivalent RAW file which has had no adjustments applied. Although it's perfectly possible to edit a JPEG file, all the adjustments that Joe made are now embedded within that file. So if we want to change any of these, we have to re-edit the image. Every time we re-edit the image, we run the risk of losing quality, so we want to try and keep this to an absolute minimum. JPEG files are compressed, meaning that when we save them, the algorithm tries to reduce the file size by ignoring data which it thinks is not important. This happens each time we save the file, so the whole thing is destructive and can only go in one direction. The more we edit and save, the more data we lose. A RAW file, on the other hand, can never be overwritten, so any edits are simply layers added onto the surface. So even if we edit a RAW file 100 times, we're still working on the original file. With a JPEG file, we're basically working on a copy of a copy of a copy, etc., which isn't going to give us the best end result. So why would anyone want to shoot in JPEG? JPEG is a great format, but only when used correctly. It has been industry standard since the 1990s, and any device will display a JPEG file. JPEGs are much smaller in terms of file size, so are more convenient for sending over the internet or for storing on hard drives. We can adjust the amount of compression applied to a JPEG file, with the most aggressive providing a small file but noticeably degrading the image, and the least aggressive providing great results but with a larger file size. As a general rule, a maximum quality JPEG file will be about a quarter of that of a RAW equivalent, meaning you can store around 4 times the amount of photos on a card or a hard drive. There's nothing wrong with using a JPEG photo as a final product, but ideally we want to avoid using a JPEG master file to edit from, as this will limit us in the changes that we're able to make. So now that we understand the difference between the two formats, how does this influence how and when we use them? The major difference is down to workflow, the order in which we do all the tasks which are needed in the taking of a photo. If we shoot in RAW, then we're essentially making the capture stage of the process far simpler, but we're increasing the work needed at the post-production stage. Shooting JPEG, if done properly, increases the workload when using the camera, but means that little or no editing is required to the end result, as Joe has already done this for us. If you shoot in RAW, then you can ignore many of the camera's functions such as white balance, saturation, sharpness, contrast, etc. You just turn the thing on and it's good to go. It really is that simple, especially if you use manual shooting mode. Basically, we've just made Joe redundant. Sorry about that, Joe. If you shoot in JPEG, then you can still turn your camera on and start shooting. But unless you have set the parameters which instruct Joe how to edit the JPEG file, then you might not get the best results. For example, if I want to shoot this scene here in JPEG, and do it properly of course, then I need to decide what white balance to use. Once I've dialed that in, I then need to analyse the scene and think, do I want more saturation or less saturation? Do I want to increase the contrast or reduce it? How much sharpness do I want? All these decisions I'm having to make before I've taken the photo, so I'm unable to see the effect these are having on the final result. I am, in essence, working blind. This might sound like a total pain in the proverbial, but unless I change these settings every time, I'm basically applying exactly the same settings to all my images. That would be the same as going on holiday and taking 1,000 photos of different subjects in different lights, and then returning home and editing the first of those photos until you are happy with it. And then looking at the rest of the task and thinking, to hell with it, I'm just going to apply the same settings to the other 999 photos. In reality, you would never do that. Yet, it's exactly what you're doing if you're shooting in JPEG and you never adjust the picture settings between each shot. If you shoot in RAW, then all the decisions can be made at the editing stage, as they are not baked into the file as they are with a JPEG. For me, I prefer to simplify the capture stage by not having to worry about settings such as white balance, as this frees up my limited brain power to concentrate more on the creative side of photography, looking for subjects, working out the best composition, and just paying attention to my surroundings, thinking, what's the light going to be doing in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, etc. All these decisions are much more difficult if I'm preoccupied with the settings in the camera. While it's true that RAW files do require more work at the post-production stage to get them looking as vibrant and dynamic as a JPEG, we have essentially shifted the workload from the capture stage to the editing stage. We generally have more time when we're sitting in front of the computer, so if it takes us a while to get the settings just right, we don't run the risk of missing the shot, as that's already been captured. The same, however, cannot be said if we're having to adjust the settings in the camera before we've even taken the shot. Oh, damn it. As I mentioned earlier, if we shoot in RAW, then we simplify the capture process and we can ignore many of the settings in our camera. The caveat to this is that although those settings don't influence the RAW file, they will influence the picture that we see on the back of the camera, because that is always a JPEG, done by none other than Joe. So if you want to see your photos looking really colourful and dynamic on the back of the camera, then turn up the saturation and contrast. This won't affect the RAW file saved to the card, but it will affect what you're seeing on the camera. Just be prepared to be slightly underwhelmed when you see your RAW files appear on the computer screen, as in comparison they'll appear very lifeless and a little bit flat. But at least you'll know where you can take those files with the right adjustments applied.
I hope that was useful for you. So that is us out of time for another show. Before I go though, I need to give you the answer to today's question. What is the equivalent f-stop of the human eye in bright conditions? A, f11, B, f5.6, C, f8 or D, f16? The correct answer was C, f8. Congratulations if you got that right. We will be back next week with another one of our PO Live shows exclusively for our supporters of PO Live level or above. This live show is brought to you in association with Case Filters UK, and we give away a £50 Case Filters voucher every show, so it's well worth getting involved. If you can't join us for that, then we will be back here with another action-packed show for everyone to enjoy in 3 weeks' time. So until then, you know what to do. Take good care, but most of all, take good photos.
As you can see, stories don't need to be drawn out. They can last from a few seconds all the way up to feature-length film length. Feature-length film length.
Using a very basic form of Photoshop at his desk. It's not a he, is it?
As you can see, stories don't need to be drawn out. They can last from a few seconds to feature... God.
Now, Joe is an excellent photo editor, but sadly, Joe is not very creative. Stop doing this.
As you can see, stories don't need to be drawn out. They can last from a few seconds to feature length. As you can see, stories don't need to be drawn out. They can last from a few seconds to feature length. Why can't I say that? Feature length film. Editing can be a scary process, especially if you're not familiar with it. And there goes the light.
Who turned the lights out?
You expect the story to be told to you. So we need to place this. Okay. May end up with completely different stories. However, with different...